is an exhibition that is starting this weekend in the Regional Cultural Centre in Letterkenny, getting underway on Saturday. And it's an exhibition of new works and eclectic portraits. I like that term, eclectic portraits. We'll find out exactly what it means in just a moment. The exhibition is by Richard Noble, no stranger to this station. He's been on a number of times, and I'm glad to say that he joins me now in the studio. Richard, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So we'll talk a little bit about you and your career to date in a moment, but eclectic portraits, do you explain?
Okay, forgive me for my voice. I have what everybody has, I think, with the throat.
There's a lot of that going around.
Yeah, but eclectic portraits, what it is basically is portraits from different times in my career. There's some movie stars, there's some regular ordinary people in it, black and white, color. It's just a group, a small group of pictures that I did over the years in Hollywood and in Ireland, actually. I have portraits of Saoirse Ronan and Pierce Brosnan and Patsy Dan Rogers, the King of Tory. And who else do I have? Brian Friel. Can't think. And then I have Clint Eastwood, Bob Dylan. Yeah. Quite a few. Interesting. And the Los Angeles Ballet Company, I did a whole series of ballet pictures for them. They're quite beautiful. And so that's part of it. But the other exhibition, the big one upstairs, is called Vita di Strada, which is Italian, which means street life. And it's something that I did really for the first time. I've always been in control of everything I photographed. I would cast it, I would find the locations, I would set it up to create a kind of a choreographed reality. Mm-hmm. But this was the first time that I actually went on the street and photographed people as they were actually living and doing their thing, you know? And I went through different towns in Italy over the 2008, 2007, and just shot away of people finding that moment that they were doing something, you know, that was quite interesting. And what I found after I photographed them, I studied the pictures, and I just kept thinking, what are they thinking? Because the Italians have wonderful expressions on their faces and their movements, their hand gestures, everything. And I thought, I wonder what these people are thinking. So it's a fascinating group of photographs. I have 63 of them. They're all framed, color, and I printed them in a style of a fresco, the fresco painting, which was what they did in the 1500s in Italy. They used to paint wet plaster, like Michelangelo did it on the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. Mm-hmm. And it's a technique that's quite beautiful. So I tried to duplicate that in my printing technique. And so I hope people like it. It opens up on Saturday.
Is that one there on the front of the poster?
Yes, that's one there. And that's a group of men, they're fishermen. And the retired fishermen, they sit around and play cards. Now, don't ask me what that card game is, but it's something like Snap or something. You know, it's a simple one. But I love the expressions on their faces and the concentration. I call that one card sharks because they just look like, and it looks like one of them is signaling the other one with his hand.
Quite possible.
You know, yeah.
And the print style makes it look like it's painting.
Yes, exactly. That's what I wanted. You know, I mean, after 50, 60 years of taking pictures, I'm sort of sick of pictures in a way, you know, just straight photography. Mm. So I tried to give it a little bit of an interest, you know, for myself and for the viewer, you know. And a lot of people do think you're painting now. And I said, no, it's just photography based, but it's what I call hybrid photography.
Okay. Yeah, well, that would be a good way of describing it, I suppose. Now, you didn't start out doing portraits. You started out in advertising and were
That's right.
very successful at a young age in New York.
That's right. Yeah.
And did did some advertising shoots for some really big names
Yes.
at the time.
Yeah. I was lucky, yes. No, I did. Well, I concentrated a lot on cigarettes, even though that's a naughty thing to say nowadays.
That's
But
where the money was then.
that's where the money was. And I was good at it, and there were lots of ads for cigarettes, and I dominated the market, actually. I mean, I shot for about 10 different brands. Nobody knew I was, I never told one that I was doing the other because they're very competitive. But yeah, I did mostly cigarettes and booze. And then I started to do fashion. I didn't like fashion that much because it was so temporary. Whatever you shot 6 months later, it was obsolete. And, so I just thought, well, let me stay with where the money is.
Yeah.
And so I did cigarettes most of my career. Even the fun cigarette one was Virginia Slims, which was a campaign that based the whole series on the emancipation of women. And the headline was, "You've come a long way, baby." And it was when women weren't allowed to smoke or vote or any of that, and then suddenly they were able to. So I would show the period pictures of where they would be punished because they were smoking, and a husband would throw her out or something. It was one of those. They were funny. I mean, they were very funny ads, and I did those for 15, 16 years, something like that. And in fact, I've been dying to do a book on just those pictures because they're so much fun, and they look like old photographs from the turn of the century.
Right.
And then I just more or less did a lot of that, and then I started to do celebrities, magazine work, some movie stars. I moved to Hollywood. I was working with movie stars and rock and roll people and things, and yeah. So I mean, I've had a great career. It's just it's been wonderful, and I want to continue as long as I'm still alive. I mean, somebody said to me the other day, "How come you're not retired yet?" And I said, "I'll retire when I die."
So while you're still alive, there's going to be no word. We're not going to mention the R word.
The R
Retire.
word. What's the
Retire.
R word? Oh.
Just going back to the celebrity photos. You took photos of some of the biggest names. I'm looking at the list here: Bob Dylan, Clint Eastwood, Cher, Pierce Brosnan, Bruce Jenner, so on. How did that process happen? Was it through their agents and management? Did they contact you? Did you go looking for the work? Was it part of publicity for films, or what was it?
I think it was all combined of everything. I couldn't say one particular one, but it's very important that you establish a reputation, that they feel comfortable with you, and they know that you'll make them look good, because they're all terrified of still photographs. They can do films and whatever, and they figure they're moving and nobody's going to really see that side of their nose or whatever, that kind of thing. But they're very, very, very paranoid about a bad picture, bad lighting. In fact, a lot of them have their own lighting demands. They'll tell you, put the light here, and I want to be at this angle and this side of my face and whatever, and you have to go along with it.
Who stood out for you in particular? Is there any one or two that stood out for you as being unpretentious and just being nice people?
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
He was a gentleman. He's still going.
He is. Another man who hasn't mentioned the R word.
No. I mean, he's 90-something now. And, I mean, we worked together a few times, and he was just wonderful. Very professional. Gave me what I needed. He was very generous and let me go with him while he was shooting, and I watched his technique. And he photographed. He would shoot the people during rehearsals because they would feel comfortable. They say, "Oh, it's a rehearsal," so they'd feel comfortable. But he'd have the cameras rolling, and
he was directing back then.
Oh yeah, he was directing. Well, he started directing very early in his career. He figured, he knew he was a star. And he knew what he wanted, and he's a very, very smart man. And he had a very soft nature, a very soft technique, of dealing with people. And like I said, he would shoot them during rehearsal, but they didn't know that they were being shot. He'd have the light off the camera shut off. He'd have it taped over so they didn't know. And he would shoot it, and if he was comfortable with their rehearsal, he'd go, "Okay, let's move on." And they go, "Well, we didn't shoot it yet." "Oh, yes, we did. It's all right. Let's move on."
He'd use that.
And that's why so he was quite clever that way. And he told me also, and I've said this before, he said the biggest money shots are the ones in moving cars. He likes to do shots in moving cars because the scenery is always moving, and you get it seems like there's more value to the production. Yeah. And then the last movie that I saw was The Mule, where he was in it, and all he's doing is driving through the whole film.
So
so he was, he was using that technique even then,
He stuck to it. Okay, so from sort of a Mad Men type existence in New York to photographing celebrities in Hollywood to Glenveigh Castle.
Yes.
And that's how you fell in love with Donegal.
That's right.
How did you, it was an encounter with Henry McElhenney in London.
That's right, in London, that's right. Very good, yeah. Well, my agent, who was in the Navy with Henry, at the time, he when would it have been, 69 or 70, something like that, it's 1970. And I was in London on a job, and I was talking to my agent in New York, and he said, oh, by the way, my friend Henry is in London at the moment. He has a castle in Ireland. You should meet him. And I said, well, okay. So Henry was staying at the Connaught. He used to stay there all the time, which is a pretty fancy hotel. Mm-hmm. And so I met Henry, and we had a drink. And he said, oh, come to visit me in Ireland. And I said, well, I'd love to, but I have to go back to New York because I have a job there now, and I'll another time, thank you. So I flew back to New York, and as I arrived at my studio manager told me that the job had been canceled. So somewhere along that flight over the Atlantic, the client had decided to change their mind and cancel the job. So I had 2 weeks of nothing, Yeah. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I called up Henry, and I actually got him on the phone because in those days it was Churchill 2.5, and you had to go through about 6 operators, including telling a New York operator, I'd like Churchill 2.5 in Ireland. She go, what are you talking about? And I go, Churchill 2.5. Yeah, what's the number? I said, Churchill 2.5. What are you talking? And I said, look, here's what you do. You call Dublin and you ask for Churchill 2.5. Dublin will get you Sligo. Sligo gets you Letterkenny. Letterkenny gets you Churchill. Anyway, we went through the whole thing.
And you did get through.
And Henry answered the phone. And I couldn't believe it. And at that point, we're screaming at each other because every time they'd stick a jack into the switchboard, the volume would go half.
Yeah.
So we're screaming and everything. And I said, Henry, the job can I still come? And he said, sure. I said, well, I could take a red eye tonight. He said, fine. I'll have Josie pick you up in the morning at Dublin, he was his driver. So I went, and Glenveigh was unbelievable. I had never seen anything like this. And so that night at dinner, we're having venison, I remember, because it was so good. Nellie Gallagher was the cook, and she used to make venison. I said, how do you make it? She said, with milk. She said, you soak it in milk. And I said, oh, good. Anyway, so we had the venison and nice German wine, and I'm sort of gliding along the meal, slightly sloshed on the wine, and his butler, Patrick, leans over to me and says, the best deal to come along in Donegal for the last 15 years is for sale. Would you like to see it? And I looked at him, and I didn't know what he was talking about. I said, what are you talking about? He said, a house. Would you like to be our neighbor? And I said, well, okay, I'll see the house, So the next day I saw this house, and it was a real kaboom. I mean, that was it. I fell in love. 4 days later, I bought it, and that was in November 1970, 54 years ago.
And you still have that house.
And I still have that house, and I think I've lived this long because I've had that house. If I had stayed in New York or L.A., I probably would have been dead by now.
It's a wonderful house. You were kind enough to invite me down many, many years ago, and it's a beautiful house. And do you still get to spend as much time in the surroundings, out in the gardens? And
yeah, I'm not too steady on my feet anymore, but yeah, I mean, I'm 81 now, so it's catching up. But I love the air. I love the peace and quiet. This morning I did a sunrise from my bedroom window, a beautiful sunrise.
Wasn't it?
Oh, it was on fire. Wasn't it gorgeous? Yeah. And, you can't get that anywhere, really. I mean, I'm so lucky to have that place, and I'm so lucky that Donegal still exists, and hopefully it'll stay the same, for years and years to come.
Yeah, well, I hope you and it will be good for one another for many years to come.
Thank you very much.
And Let's just remind the listeners again of that exhibition. It's an up and down, so...
Yes, it's in the foyer and it's up in the big gallery, and please come. It's an interesting group of photographs, and I think everybody will enjoy it. There's wine and biscuits and chocolates and some good pictures.
Very good. It opens this Saturday evening at 6 o'clock. That's when the opening is, but then it will run through until...
January 25th, yeah.
Okay. Richard Noble, as always, great pleasure.
Thank you so much.